A vision of Luang Por leading me over a large river. One night, I experienced a vision, nimitta, of Luang Por Bua coming toward me. He said, "Prat Thoon, come down here. I'll take you somewhere." I left the hut, kuti, and followed him. Up ahead was a wide river approximately 8 meters wide by 8 meters deep, bound by steep banks. There was a single bamboo pole of an arm's thickness draped across the two opposite banks like a bridge. Once we reached the river, Luang Por said, "I will bring you across the river to the other side," and proceeded to walk across the bamboo pole. The pole simply lay there, unaffixed to anything and without a railing to prevent one from falling. But Luang Por made it across without moving the pole in any way. He turned back to face me and beckoned me with his hand. "Prat Thoon, hurry up and follow me across the bridge now." I thought to myself, if Luang Por can make it across, why shouldn't I be able to? I focused and walked across the bamboo pole. Though the pole simply lay there, it didn't bend under my weight. While I made my way across, I could feel that the pole was heavy, sturdy, and didn't move at all. I found it very easy to balance myself without leaning in any way. I easily followed Luang Por and made my way across to safety. Once I joined Luang Por on the opposite riverbank, he asked, "Do you see anything in the water?" I replied, "I do." He said, "This is what the world is like." I observed the elderly, middle-aged, young, and infant, males and females, being dragged along the river as if they were a human raft. The people were terrified of dying. Some fought to survive. The strong latched onto the weak and used them as a boat. Those of comparable strength clung to one another, tossing and flailing in the water, hoping to mount the other and use them as a raft to ride out the river. Whoever clambered their way to the top was considered the victor. It was a chaotic tangle of men grabbing onto women and women grabbing onto men. Some called out to others for help. Many clawed their way up the banks, but ultimately failed to reach the top and slipped back down. Putrid corpses floated alongside the living. It was a sorrowful sight. Those dragged along the river would likely be swept out to the ocean, Mahasamudra, where they would circle for an eternity. They would surely die in the great ocean of worldly conventions, Mahasamuti. I was unable to tell from where the river of humans started, as it extended far beyond the limits of my vision. Once my mind, citta, withdrew from the meditative state, I reviewed what I had seen and used wisdom, paññā, to interpret the vision. The meaning of the metaphor became very clear to me, and I understood and realized the truth about humans. The tumultuous river represented desire, tanha. The bamboo pole bridge represented the noble eightfold path, ariyamaka. The massive human raft drifting along the river represented human desires. Once born into this world, there are only a few humans who do not get pulled along by the tides of desire. The majority of people will be dragged under by sensual desires, kamakuna. After death, only those who have cultivated ample merit, puññā, will enjoy a brief respite in a heavenly realm, saga. Once they have exhausted their good merit, they will return to the human world for another rebirth, and their minds will continue to follow the path of desire. The more the mind is slave to lust, raka, and desires, tanha, the deeper the worldly currents will drag you under. Who knows when you will be able to break free from them? So long as your mind is still pleased with the world, you will remain unaware of how much longer you will be dragged along by worldly currents. You will have no clue where they end. While the currents of desire and defilement still course through your mind, you will never escape the interminable worldly currents. I used wisdom to teach my mind. Why is my mind so enraptured with sensual pleasures, kamakuna? Happiness cannot be found in this world. The notion that sensual pleasures provide happiness is a false one. Thus, piyato chayate soko. Affection begets sorrow. Suffering is the inevitable product of love, is it not? Suffering stems from love. Suffering stems from desire. Desire, tanha, is the taproot of the cycle of rebirth, samsara. The three realms, the sensual realm, kamapava, the fine material realm, rupapava, and the immaterial realm, arupapava, are all ruled by desire. Thus, natti tanha samanati, there is no river like craving. Why can't the mind see the suffering, dukkha, harmful consequences, dosa, and dangers, paya, that exist in this world? We cannot take worldly belongings and make them our own. Our clinging and attachments are the causes and conditions that produce suffering. True happiness cannot be found in this world. This nimitta was a great Dhamma metaphor for my wisdom. It enabled me to understand how the world operates. Without wisdom, I never would have been able to interpret this vision. Consequently, the vision would have been worthless. Thus, you must cultivate your own wisdom so that you can use your nimittas to teach yourself. If you lack the wisdom required to train your mind to improve, your mind will essentially be meaningless. Thus far, you have allowed defilements, kilesa, and desires, tanha, to drag your mind downward. Your thoughts and views heavily lean toward defilements and desires, and you have unknowingly become accustomed to thinking in a base and immoral manner. Are you going to continue to allow these wrong views to direct your life? Why don't you train your wisdom so that you can employ it in teaching yourself? If you point out the truth about reality to yourself often, your mind will gradually become more well-informed about the truth. The truth exists in all of the conditioned things, sappa sankhara, in this world. You do not need to compel anything to be a certain way. This is how it is supposed to be. Sapphe sankhara anicca. All conditioned things, sankhara, are impermanent. All conditioned things constantly experience change and uncertainty. Whether they are internal sankharas or external sankharas, naturally arising sankharas, or sankharas we have created, no sankharas are constant. They are all sankharas that change throughout their lifespans. If we have the wisdom to understand and realize according to these truths, the suffering within our minds will lessen. Once aware of the truth of all conditioned things, we say the mind understands and realizes according to the truth. Thus, build up your own wisdom in order to employ it in fixing your mind's wrong views. If your wisdom lacks intelligence, you will be unable to know and see according to the truth of reality. Even if a teacher explains the truth to you, apprehension and doubt will still arise within your mind. You will be too afraid to be decisive because you are unsure about whether something is wrong or right. Though reserved in speech, Luang Por Thoon would suggest Dhamma models, ubaya, and techniques for the monks and novices, samaneras, to work out on their own. Those with strong wisdom would be able to decipher the meaning, while those with weak wisdom would remain clueless. Sapphe sankhara dukkha. All conditioned things, sankhara, are suffering. If you cling to conditioned things, this can cause suffering. We desire for conditioned things to remain under our power. Because they are not under our power, suffering arises. This natural condition of suffering, sabhava dukkha, has been a part of us since birth. Once born, we are greeted by miscellaneous suffering, pakinaka dukkha, various transient suffering that comes and goes, jara dukkha, that piles on until we are distressed and always scrambling to dodge and evade it. We constantly attempt to conceal or cover up the truth. As a result, our minds have become accustomed to the distress and endure it. We endure the suffering from the day we are born until the day we die. We don't have a solution. If you recognize the suffering and recognize the cause of the suffering, that suffering won't trouble you much. Only you must be aware of the suffering and aware of the cause of suffering. Sapphe dhamma anatta. All things, conditioned or unconditioned, are not self. Anatta is the cessation of existence of the atta state. Absent the construct, samutti, of self, atta, where would not self, anatta, come from? Thus, in order to know not self, anatta, you must know self, atta. This is because self is a solid identity or form, rupa, that can be supposed, samutti, to be an animal or a person. There are two types of self, atta. 1. Self in physical phenomena, rupa, and 2. Self in mental phenomena, nama. Both types of self, atta, must be understood through wisdom knowledge, paññāyāna, meaning seeing and then knowing, tassanayana, and knowing and then seeing, yana tassana. If you merely see but do not know, or if you merely know but do not see, then you won't be able to nullify that state of self, atta, into a state of not self, anatta. This is because you are lacking in yana tassana. Self, atta, in physical phenomena denotes the four elements, jatu tatu, of earth, water, wind, and fire that combine to form a physical identity, rupa. Thus, you must use wisdom to break down physical form and clearly recognize and understand the role each of the four elements play in it. As for self, atta, in mental phenomena, nama, this relates to feeling, vedana, memory, sanya, mental formations, sankhara, and consciousness, vijnana, which must also be understood and realized through wisdom.